Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time, you are highly welcome, and if you are yet to subscribe, please do so. And if you are a returning subscriber, God bless you. Please turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video. So today we are going to be making a short pencil skirt with a side ruffle. So this is the fabric we'll be using today, the lining piece and the fabric we'll be using for the ruffles. So you go ahead now and fold your fabric into two. Then you're going to take out the borders because we won't be needing them. You just take them out like this, and make sure your other side of the fabric is straight so that you can take your measurement from it. So you go ahead now and take your full measurement. So the full measurement of this skirt we are making is 22. Meanwhile, I minus 2 inches from the band allowance and 2 inches for the turning allowance. So I'll go ahead to the top of where we start our measurement from. So I'll take 8 inches, which is going to be my hip point. Okay, please, if you know you can actually use freehand, you can use your meter rule. So I'll go ahead now to the waist part. My waist divided by 2 is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So I take out 8 and 2 inches for sewing allowance. So I'll go back to the hip point and also measure out my hip by 4, just the way I did for the waist, divided by 4. So and then I'll also add 2 inches for sewing allowance. So what I'm going to do next is, for us to get our down part, whatever we have on the hip side, we are just going to minus 1 inches for whatever we have from the hip, and then you go ahead and mark. So right now you are going to connect all the lines that we've marked out. You just connect from the hip to the waist and just connect everything together so we can cut. Now before we cut, so you are going to, for you to get your dart, you are going to mark your bust point from your nipple to nipple point, your nipple to nipple point. Then my nipple to nipple point was 8, and whatever you have as your nipple to nipple point, you divide it by 2, just the way I did, and there you will get your dart measurements. So you go ahead now and mark and launch the dart measurement and cut out. So this is the front part that we've just cut out now. So as I earlier said, you go ahead and launch so that you know where your dart will start from. So we are going to cut out the back. So you bring in your fabric, fold it to, then bring the front parts that you've cut, and then this back part is going to be 1.5 inches bigger than the front part, because there's going to be a zip at the back of the skirt. So 1.5 inches for the zipper allowance, and also go ahead and launch your dart parts. So you go ahead now and cut out whatever it is that you've got on your fabric. You cut out the same for your lining piece. Now remember, we left 2 inches for the turning allowance, so you are going to cut out your lining piece like this, leaving the 2 inches out of it. Okay, So before anything, because we are going to be turning this skirt round like a very neat sewing, you are going to go ahead and take 4 inches from your waist down to get where your dart will get to. So just as I'm making it here, 4 inches from the waistline down to where the 4 inches will get to. So you go to your sewing machine and sew slightly like this. You do the same for the both sides. This is what we have after sewing for the fabric and the lining piece. So you go ahead now and turn the down parts and also the side. So after turning, you are just going to flip it over through the waistline, since we didn't turn out the waistline because there's going to be a band there. You just turn it out through the waist on both sides, the back and the front. So this is what we have after turning and also stitching the waist. So the next thing we're going to do now is to bring the back part, then from my waistline down to where my zipper will get to is 7, and I mark, and from the down part where the slits will be, I also took out 7 inches. This is all dependent on you. You can make it 5, 6 or even more, depending on how deep you want it and how open you want it to be. So from that zipper allowance and to the stitch point is where we'll mark our 1 inches allowance for zipper. So after marking and just tracing out the 1 inches allowance, that is the point we'll be sewing from the zip point to the stitch point. We'll go ahead to the sewing machine now and sew. So this is what we have after sewing the parts where there is no zip and the parts where there is slitting. So this is what we have. Then we'll go ahead now and fix in our zip. So go ahead now and fix in our zip from that 1 inches allowance we have. Make sure you pin down for easy sewing. So you do the same for the both sides. Then you go in by 1 inch, so you will not overstep the boundaries. I mean, you will not take out the zip from the 1 inch for the allowance. And go to your sewing machine and sew. So this is what we have after sewing the zip. This is how it look like at the back with the zip. Okay, and here it is the slits. It all depends on how deep you want it to be though. So for the front, you go ahead now and mark your center point where we'll be taking our measurement from. Before you close, we are going to impute the ruffles. So that is where we are taking out the measurement. We are marking out the measurement. So don't forget to also get your hip point. You take up your measurement. So you go ahead and connect with whatever measurement we have. So the line is where we'll be having our ruffles. Remember, from the center part of this fabric to one side is your measurement divided by 4, because this is just the front part. Okay, so this is the ruffles that we have. This is practically, we're not going to leave it like this because this is going to be into 2. I'm folding into 2 because it's a very light fabric and I want it to be a little bit thick. So I'll just go ahead and fold it into 2, then go to my sewing machine and just run a stitch for the gathering part. So this is what I have after running my thread through my fabric. Then I'll just go ahead now and drag to the gather desired that I want. So this is what we have. So from the waistline, you're just going to go down by 1 inches. That is where our ruffles is going to start from. So you just go in now and pin down your ruffles. Make sure it's the same as whatever you have after taking out 1 inches from the waist side. So if it is excess, you can just drag it to the number of or to the inches that you have in your skirt. Put your ruffles at that particular end that we've marked and pin, and then sew. So this is what we have after sewing the ruffles. This is how it look like on the front parts. Okay, we just go ahead now and bring the back part of the fabric and lay on the front parts. Don't forget to always use your pin, it helps a lot. So after pinning, just go ahead to your sewing machine and sew. So this is what we have after sewing both the back and the front. This is how it look. Our skirt is coming out so beautiful. So this is how the ruffles look on both sides. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do now is to cut out the band for the waist. So remember, our band we left was 2 inches. First of all, you go ahead and measure around your waistline. Whatever you have from your waistline, that is what we are using to cut the band. Okay, 2 inches, then just half inches for the sewing allowance. So you go ahead now and sew round your waistline. So this is how it look after sewing for the first time. Then you go ahead now and just match through the other side. So this is how it look after sewing for both sides. This is how it look. So here we are done with our skirts. So if you enjoyed this video and it was useful, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, like and share this video.